if psychology and pop culture had a baby, they'd call it Shrink Tank.
A new paper reveals more intelligent people are quicker to learn and unlearn.
90% chance that there's some weird animal out there. Yeah.
Stern's been doing this forever and far more extreme. From Nashville and Charlotte, this is the Shrink Tank Podcast. Welcome, everybody. If you're joining us for the first time, a special welcome to you. And if you're coming back for more, so much thanks to you. Thanks for joining us again. I'm Dave Verhagen in Nashville. We've got a great show for you. Our trending topic today is Westworld. We'll get to that in our second segment. But first, let's meet our Charlotte panel. Dr. Emma Kate Wright is here. Hello, Emma Kate.
Hi, Dave. How you doing?
I'm doing great. And Dr. Frank Gaskell's also with us. Hello, Frank.
Hello, David. How are you?
I am well. And Jonathan Hedderly, who's our certified Asian, rounds out the panel. And Jonathan, you doing well?
I am, Dave. Since you answered Emma, Kate, and Frank, how are you doing since then?
Not so great.
Oh, no.
Yeah, a lot can change in a minute.
In the 15 seconds between that, I really fell down the hill. All right. Well, so we've established how well we are, and we're just moving right along. And each week, Jonathan trolls the internet to find a great story of psychology in the news. It's our first segment that we call
Being Human.
Why can some people be productive, say in a coffee shop, but not in an open office? New research shows that it may not be the sound itself that distracts us, but it may be who is making it. In fact, some levels of office banter in the background might actually benefit our ability to do creative tasks, provided we don't get drawn into the conversation. So instead of total silence, the ideal work environment for creative work has a little bit of background noise. And that's why you might focus really well in a noisy coffee shop, but barely be able to concentrate in a noisy office. So Frank, I'm going to ask Emma Kate what she thinks about this study and whether or not it holds true in her own personal experience.
Well, as we know, I really struggle with paying attention. And I 100% agree with points that this study talked about. So the idea that, who's making the noise is a big factor. So, for example, when Frank's stomach makes a lot of noise, lots of gurgling, he's my friend. And so I'm kind of like, okay, that's annoying, but I can handle it. He'll go to the bathroom. He'll work that out. Then there's how much noise you actually experience. So that's a big factor where it's like the decibels was something that this article talked about. So I think if it's actually really loud, there is this sort of threshold where you can be productive. And then, having that space, like for me, I wrote my entire dissertation at the Barnes & Nobles down the street here from our office, having that freedom from distraction, knowing that I'm not going to get pulled into side conversations. Because a lot of times, we work in an open office, especially here in the Shrink Tank, there's a lot of fun stuff going on and I want to be a part of that. So I get distracted.
Is she's still talking?
I am.
I just heard noise. That's all I heard. It's just noise. Yeah. No, I agree with it too. All the writing that I've ever done that's been any good has been in a caribou, and I always have to sit in the same seat, and I just sort of sit there, and that background noise makes me more creative. I cannot write at home. I can't do it.
And do you know why?
I think one, it's too quiet, and two, when you stick to a routine, like you always study in a certain place, then when you get to that place, your brain turns on to study rather than do something else. So if I'm at home, I'm thinking, okay, I want to play Fortnite. But if I'm at Caribou, I want to work.
So you associate home, with your wife and kids. It's like, I think of Fortnite.
Yes.
That's
Right.
the trigger.
There it is.
Fortnite.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm excited for the comet. Should have happened very soon.
I can't relate to this
no.
at all. Not the
It
Fortnite
actually
part,
already
'cause
didn't it?
Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. I can write or study anywhere. I can, like at home, I've got a little lazy boy recliner chair that I sit in and do my writing, and then I can go to a coffee shop. I was on vacation a couple weeks ago, and I took my computer out to the beach and sat under this little palm tree, and there were friends around me, and they were having conversations, and I'd join the conversation, and then I'd disappear into my writing for a few minutes and all that stuff. So I don't know. To me, I can do it wherever.
I could never do that.
But don't you live in like your own little world, Dave, like Bobby's world, where it's like you just get sucked in and like even your magic, you go to this sort of nostalgic little childlike place that's protected from all these other outside influences?
The little
Yes,
universe
that's
in his
exactly
head.
what I do.
I would think so. Versus, so there's Dave, and then there's me, where mid-conversation, I get distracted by a falling leaf.
We
So
were
that
Craig
happened.
Pullman was recording his podcast, Blew My Mind, in here before this. So we were all congregated in my office, and Emma Kate could not handle a clock that was beside where
was
she was
so
sitting.
loud.
And everyone else is like, what is she talking about? She's like, it's going tick, 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 tick.
It's really loud. Like, not just like a quiet, soft, gentle tick, tick, tick. More a tick, tick. That's what it felt like to me when I was trying to focus.
Now, Dave, do you ever write in the bathtub? Because that is one of your rituals and traditions. Is as you
I
sort
do
of
not.
like
I would love
exfoliate
to
and write.
I would love to write in the bathtub, but I haven't figured out how to guarantee that my computer will not fall into the bathtub. So once I figure that out, once I fail safe the bathtub from the computer, then I'm writing in the bathtub. But yes, it is true. Every night, it used to be every morning, but every night, usually before dinner, I will pour a very hot bath. And by the way, you guys are going to love this. It has become a bubble bath in the last year.
No.
While listening to
Yeah.
Kenny G.
Do you drink virgin mimosas when you're in there?
Oh my gosh.
And my dog comes into the room and sits over at the side and looks
Peeps.
at me lovingly.
Ew.
And I read
Bubble
Entertainment
sandcastles.
Weekly.
Is it a
That's what I do.
Is it a bath bomb?
Yeah, those are
I have
things.
done a bath bomb. Yes.
Oh.
Those are great.
I don't
Is
prefer
there-
the bath bomb. I
Is
prefer
there
the
a
bubble bath.
ring, a stain in your
Ew.
bathtub?
Do you use Mr. Bubbles, though? That's the real question.
No,
Mr. Bubbles.
Okay.
I do not. I use Calgon.
Calgon.
Oh boy.
Please take me away.
Man, he is falling apart. These are the end stages.
He's the Liza Minnelli of the
boy.
podcast team.
Oh man, it's what I've always aspired to be, the Liza Minnelli of a podcast. So anyway, yes, I would love to write in the bathtub. That would be so fun, but I haven't figured it out yet. I can't even read my iPad in the bathtub. I have to read a physical magazine.
Because you don't trust yourself not falling asleep and dropping technology in.
Kind of,
in the
yeah. I
water
mean,
with
it's
you?
sort of that. Yeah. It's just all it takes is one mistake, and then it's all ruined.
But you
so.
you actually like the paper magazines because when it gets wet, it gets all, wrinkly and pruny, just like you are in the bathtub. So your
Yeah,
magazine becomes a part of you.
Helps me relate to the magazine better.
There you go.
All right. And with that, let's shift gears to our trending topic, which today is Westworld, the HBO series. They finished season 1, and I will tell you, they stuck the landing on season 1 as well as any season I've ever seen of a series, maybe up there with Breaking Bad. And so now season 2 is launching, I think, this weekend. And so let me go around the horn and ask if you watched season 1 already. Emma Kate, did you watch
Yes.
season 1? All
Yes,
right.
I watched it twice and loved it.
Give me your general kind of take on, besides just loving it, your general take on why you loved it, what you thought about it.
It's a combination. I mean, the cinematography, the filming that they had in this was unreal. Part of that was because I think they had like $1 million budget per episode.
10 million.
10 million per episode?
10 when the
Goodness.
first episode cost 25 million.
Okay. Well, so that just gives you a little glimpse into the level of filming and the music production. I mean, everything, the acting. I mean, it's just a really beautifully done series, as well as, on top of having great writing, good storyline. And as you said, they really stuck the landing in terms of the end. And now I'm just like, well, where are we going now? Like, what's going to happen next?
Yeah. Frank, how about you?
I love it, love it, love it. I'm just so excited for Sunday. And I was excited when they announced it because I remember watching Westworld. I got a DVD of it, and it just kind of blew my mind the first time I saw it back in the 70s. But the symbolism of Alice in Wonderland and the music, it's just a perfect series.
Jonathan, did you watch?
I did. And like everybody else, I'm a huge fan, and I agree with everything that people have said. I never really saw the original movie with Yul Brynner. I knew of it and its source material. I believe it was Michael Crichton that wrote the novel.
Yes.
And I love the themes that it's tackling and the way that it's doing it, because you have these overlapping narratives of characters. And for some, it's really a commentary on what it means to be human and have a conscience. And for others, it's a critique or a commentary on technology and whether some people will use it for sort of positive entertainment and distraction, or will other people use it for maybe more violent kind of means to get gratification out of it. So I love watching all the different characters and their relationship in the Westworld that they've created.
It is a really great show. Loved everything about it. I love the characters, the themes, the artfulness of it. Really good writing, everything about it. And there's a lot of to talk about with this from a psychological standpoint. And I wanted to start with a question that our producer, Sean Beck, posed. And that is whether you, given this sort of storyline around technology and artificial intelligence and where that's going, would you consider yourself to be a techno-optimist or a techno-pessimist? And a techno-optimist would be someone that believes technology can continuously be improved and improve our lives. It can make the world a better place, that it has made our lives and our world better, and it's going to continue to do so. And it's going to play a big role in making things better. And a techno-pessimist would be someone who thinks that modern technology has created as many problems for humanity as it's solved, and that this new technology is likely to bring about many new problems, unforeseen consequences, dangers, and that in the future, technology is going to be more of a problem than more of a godsend or a blessing. Now, obviously, we would all say there's elements of both, right? That there's a good and a bad side to technology. But if you had to weigh in on it, where would you tend to fall? Jonathan, where would you fall on that continuum between being optimistic or pessimistic about technology?
Well, it's interesting because I think I'm actually a pretty pessimistic person by nature, but I'm a techno-optimist. I just believe in science and progress and innovation, and I think when you look back on history, a lot of the ills and problems that have plagued humanity in the past, science and innovation and that need to discover has actually created more solutions than problems.
Okay, Frank.
It's a little bit complicated because, I mean, yeah, there's good and bad, but my answer is I think things are going to get dramatically worse, like really bad, over the next 20 to 25 years. But then I think it's possible things could be awesome after that. Because
in what way will they get bad?
Well, I mean, we're seeing it with essentially data mining, artificial intelligence, Facebook, the use of technology in politics, in war, and it's new. There are so many unforeseen consequences that are happening, but also it's increasing this digital divide between the haves and the have-nots. The education system seems very divided in how people are becoming educated. It's very polarizing, and if we can make it through that, then honestly, society is really, really going to have to change, because the more we are using technology to build up industry and various services in the world, people aren't going to be able to have jobs, which means then governments are going to have to create a sustainable income that they're going to just be paid because you're alive. And it just seems there's a lot of problems ahead with that.
So how does it, you think it gets worse and then it gets better. So how does it get better?
The world becomes Star Trek, basically.
How?
You know.
What?
Well, in Star Trek world, you don't have money, at least in the Federation.
Star Trek world.
And, food's free. Everything's sort of, okay, all your basic needs are provided, and then the time that you have is spent being artistic or creative or doing something you love and enjoy, exploring that kind of stuff.
What's the timeline for this in your mind?
That is
2049.
That's so weird. Frank just spent like 3 minutes going about how the world is going to hell in a handbasket, and then his answer is like the most simplistic, optimistic. Star Trek, like,
well, that's the end.
No money, and
Yeah.
and then everybody just doesn't have that insatiable need for consumerism, and they
Right.
do art instead.
Yeah, that's the end game.
Yeah,
So you're going to have a hard time coping without your money, I guess.
I'll be
Right?
dead,
You'll be
and
dead.
I'll leave you none of it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, I wasn't going to get any of it anyway, so yeah. No,
Well, I don't know if you're going to be dead in 2049, Frank. It's going to be close. It's a close call, but I don't know
your
about that.
cholesterol medicine.
we should do a pool.
I'd be 80. Yeah, I'm not seeing 80, but maybe.
Maybe.
Emma Kate, where do you land?
I mean, obviously we're all kind of in agreement that it is sort of this mixed bag, but I'm in the same camp as Jonathan, where I lean more towards that optimism angle. Just with, I think about, science and technology and how much growth and development we do have and access to information. And for me personally, I've talked to viewers or listeners before about, being a cancer survivor. I for sure would have died, or I would not have a leg if it was not for technology and modern advances. And so there's so much though that comes, with these developments. But I think where we kind of start to go down the negative bunny trail is how people use it, and so that's a different issue in terms of some of that morality and when information is out there, how do we use it? So that's my two piece.
I'm generally a techno optimist, but I think there's a possibility that, like you said, medical advances, other advances with technology, and that's all great until it's a whopping big thing happening where, something whopping big, not like it gradually get like where the robots take us over and turn us into batteries. And by the way, I'm fine with that.
I was about to say, I thought you wanted that, Dave.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too. I just don't want sharp, pointy things taking me out.
Right. But
what if it was a fluffy thing? You said sharp and pointy. What if it was soft and fluffy? I don't know. Right?
Oh my
it could
gosh.
still you could still be smothered by it.
Okay.
Right?
Good job. You were saying, Dave?
I was going to say, let me just clarify. I am okay with the robots taking over and turning me into a battery and all that, but I don't think that is generally good for mankind. Like, I'm personally fine with that. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever.
I don't think the robots are going to look to Dave as the optimal battery anyways. There's very little juice
Unless
left in
he's
this
charged by
one.
like chili dogs or something, then I don't know.
I would agree with that statement that you made, Emma Kate, in terms of the medical advances, but I would say the same thing that Dave does. Dave said it's great until it's absolutely not great, where you look at genetic engineering, changing our DNA, selecting kids that you want versus those that you don't. That's where it gets kind of scary, the whole ethical part of technology.
And that's true. But I mean, some of that is good. Like, it's how it's used. That's the issue. And so until we figure out, and even then, part of it is technology changes so rapidly that we just can't really keep up with it. And there's somebody always doing something to try and get the little bit of advantage. And so that's the bad bunny trail.
Well, and it's a philosophical question where, do you argue that technology is bad, or is that the human condition to where they create philosophical dilemmas where it can be misused, but technology in and of itself or advancement in and of itself is not to blame?
Well, that's Westworld itself.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that's a good lead into Westworld, and that's actually a perfect bridge to it. And so when we're looking at Westworld, and for those of you who are listening, most of you have either seen or know about the show, that it is a show about a adult theme park that is set in the Wild West, and the hosts in the theme park are robots. And we won't give too much away if you haven't seen it. If you have seen it, you know what we're talking about, that some things happen that are either expected or unexpected, depending on who you are in the show. And by the way, I will just say, one of the great foreshadowing moments in television history, where I think in the first episode, this ingenue, this sort of plains dwelling woman, has this sort of very innocent line: "Violent delights have violent ends," and yepper. So let me ask you, one of the things that it raises in the show is the nature of consciousness. The final episode of last season was called The Bicameral Mind, and that was the work of a psychologist, last name was Janes, who back in the 70s had this idea that the human mind was previously two halves, one half that obeyed and the other half that basically commanded, and they weren't integrated. So this part said jump, the other part said how high. And so that was, as recently as 3,000 years ago, he says, was how the human brain was designed. And so we would interpret thoughts as a sign from the gods or something like that. And we didn't have this sense of that being integrated. And so this idea is raised in there of when these things, which by the way, most psychologists don't believe that to be the way the human mind's set up, or that it ever was, but that was a theory. But that when these things merge, there's this sense of consciousness. Any thoughts about the theme of artificial intelligence becoming conscious that comes out of this show? Any comments about that? Okay.
Well, so, and it's hard to relate this to Westworld, but, there's this theme about, and I don't know if this is really a spoiler or not, but it is this theme of whether or not these robots within Westworld have consciousness, their own thoughts, their own feelings. And so that's kind of this dilemma that the show is really trying to pull for. But I think, when you think about even like little toy robots and other things, the idea of humans like to project feelings onto inanimate objects, things that, I think there was some stuff with like wars where they have these drones that go, and we might have actually talked about this before, where they go in and defuse landmines, and they were actually like not letting the robots go because they didn't want something bad to happen to the robots. And so, thinking of Westworld, where is that line? I would wonder for these people that go into this park, where some of them probably do view these robots as real people with feelings, while others are not. And then that's where some of that morality piece comes in from the show, where people are fulfilling really dark fantasies. And so I think it's hard to say. I think it varies so much from person to person.
Frank, any thoughts? Or Jonathan, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the interesting angles that I keep thinking about with Westworld is the influence of affluence, because it's very wealthy people that only have access to the Westworld, as far as I can understand.
$447,000 a week.
And so there's a part of me that is always curious of like, when people have such wealth and access to all types of things to entertain and please them, do they become desensitized to that? And so you have to up the ante of what provokes a reward response in your brain. And so Westworld to me is just as much a critique or commentary on how sometimes even overabundance of wealth or hedonism can lead to enjoyment and pleasure at the expense of other people. And so that kind of moral angle I find fascinating. And, I'd be remiss to not say I see that sometimes in some of my clients, whether it's addiction and the buildup of tolerance of overuse, or people that come from very successful and wealthy families, and they really have had every type of luxury available to them, to where life can actually feel a little numbing and unrewarding, and they're always looking for something to create a spark in their life.
Yeah. This is sort of related. Our sound engineer, Sean, introduced me to a Isaac Asimov story that I think is 1953. And Asimov is one of my favorite authors, but it's the story, essentially, I'll make it very simple, of this thing called the multivacs, and just think of them as computers. And over time, they get smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter. And basically, this is a spoiler, so if you don't want to know, tune out for a minute. But at the end of the story, this multivac says, "Let there be light." And the idea is that these computers, this intelligence gets to a point where there's self-awareness, but like a godlike property, and then it just becomes this vicious cycle, sort of a Stephen King cycle. And that's the thing that really, the idea that these beings, what does it mean to be a being? What does it mean to be conscious? Morality. That's just, I find fascinating about this show.
Right. And so these robots, they are in these human dramas where some of them get killed, shot, assaulted, sexually assaulted. And then after that's all done, then they go in there and they drag their robot bodies off and they wipe their memories and they start again. And the idea is that they are to have no memory of all this stuff, that it's all gone. And then we start seeing this awareness of past memories and also some consciousness around how to think about that and what it means and what's right and wrong and those kinds of things. So do you think that in the show, like Dolores and the other characters, do you think that they were developing true consciousness?
I do. But I do only because I believe that's the design. That was the intent. I think that's what the bicameral mind episode's about. Is
Right.
that there's another layer there that was meant to come out and tear down the world, basically.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Frank. Where I mean, even how they have these flashbacks. It's from these traumas that they've experienced throughout the show as it's gone on, feels so real to them. It's very hard on them, and so I think they are.
Yeah, I think they're developing consciousness, but I also attach it to free will because as they're becoming self-aware, you see several robots choose different paths and choices of how they utilize that awareness. For some, it's really about enacting revenge and suffering on those that they deem responsible for creating them and putting them through such reoccurring trauma. For others, it's really about reconciliation or finding someone in one of their narratives that there is a level of love or connection with. So it's really fascinating to see as the artificial intelligence becomes self-aware, what path they ultimately choose for the life that they want to experience.
And also, there's another really interesting aspect of this show. Is it's kind of like a real life video game that you can go and you can do all this stuff and you can't get hurt. And I was reading a little of the background stuff on this thing, and the director, it's Christopher Nolan's brother. He says like one of his favorite video games is BioShock, and one of the characters in BioShock, his name is Sander Cohen. If you look at one of the episodes, you can see the head of this character from the video game on a shelf in the background, and he looks at it as like there are these characters and they're so fully developed and so interesting, even they're just side characters that you shoot and kill and you blow through in the game. That's incorporated into the show, that these are wasted characters you're destroying, but they're also fascinating.
Yeah. It's interesting. I didn't know that about BioShock, and that game is very literary and very deep and philosophical. And so I could definitely see that they inhabit kind of similar intellectual spaces for sure.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot more to talk about with this. And I think I'd love for us to either at the end of the season or maybe midway through revisit some of this, because to be honest, I don't know where they're going with this. I think it's fascinating. The ending was such a perfect ending. And it's now what? Where does this go?
Well, there are two more.
Yeah, my guess is they're going to open up other parks. Yeah. That's part
in
of
the
it.
original, there were 3.
Yeah. Well, I think there might be more than 2, to be honest.
Yeah, there were 3, I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on and do our final segment that we call our Doctor's Orders. These are things that we're personally enjoying in pop culture. And Emma Kate, do you have something for us?
Yeah. So for those of our listeners who are more local, we are in Charlotte, or at least part of the podcast team is. There's something called Films on Tap, which will be happening on Tuesday the 24th at Resident Cultural Brewery. Shrink Tank will actually be there. Doors open at 6 p.m. and there's live music. But what happens is for $10, you get in the door and you get a flight of beer. And for each, sample beer, it's paired with a short film. And these are all locally produced films. Our sound engineer and producer, Sean Beck, will be there. But so it's going to be a really cool event, and I think people should try to check it out.
So you get a flight of beer per film?
No. So you get one flight for $10.
But not per film?
Nope.
Okay,
so
got it.
You get the little beer sample at the beginning of each film.
I was thinking you were probably hoping for about 30 films.
Right. So about 30 small beers.
Because you're a drunk.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
There it is.
There it is. And Frank, what do you have?
I would like all of our listeners to go to YouTube and type in movie opening flute. So 20th Century Fox opening flute. And you will, at least I died laughing when I saw this. I didn't know it existed. So check it out.
I cannot believe you just recommended that.
I did. It was the best part of my day today.
It is literally either something that you're going to think is hilarious or you're going to think about Frank being just a loser.
Well, both of those are true.
Yeah, both of those can
that's true.
happen.
I mean, either one works.
Okay, there. Okay.
Alrighty. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Shrink Tank podcast. We hope you'll check out shrinktank.com for great articles and videos, and also some links to our Doctor's Orders products, although not the link to flute, I would imagine. You can follow us on Twitter at @shrink_tank and like us on Facebook. And for questions and comments, write us at feedback@shrinktank.com. Our producer and theme music composer is Sean Beck. For Emma Kate Wright, Jonathan Hederley, and Frank Gaskell in Charlotte, I'm Dave Verhagen in Nashville. Tell all your friends about us and make it a great week.
Shrinktank.com